Like its Scandinavian neighbors, Denmark was invaded by Germany in April of 1940. However, unlike Sweden and Norway, the Danish king remained in the country, creating an intriguing situation for its citizens and the German occupying forces. Hello, I'm Linda Shenton-Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. While researching my stories, I unearthed tons of intriguing historical information that doesn't end up in my books, so I've created this channel to share those tidbits with you. The German occupation of Denmark went through two phases. Following the invasion and occupation, the Danish elected government continued to function. Free elections continued to be held, and Danish armed forces were allowed to exist. In contrast with other occupied countries, the relationship between Denmark and the German Third Reich was channeled through the Danish Foreign Ministry, the German Embassy, and the German Foreign Ministry in Berlin, at least in theory. More than 20,000 Danish workers were recruited to voluntarily work in Germany, replacing German men who were in the army. As there was significant unemployment in Denmark at the time, the Danish government encouraged this recruitment. Additionally, at least 5,000 Danish volunteers joined the SS unit, the Danish Free Corps. Denmark was a high food-producing nation, and before the war exported a tremendous amount to Great Britain. After the war commenced, Danish exports were rerouted to Germany instead, with about 75% of production going to the Third Reich. Additionally, Denmark's major industries were integrated with the German war effort, and many Danish manufacturing firms obtained subcontracts from German armament and electronics firms. Some scholars see this as collaboration, while others posit that Denmark had no choice. By all reports, the German command treated Denmark lightly and often referred to the country as a quote-unquote model protectorate. Referring to the relative ease of the occupation and copious amount of dairy products, Denmark became known as the cream front. Many sources claim that daily life in Denmark didn't change after the occupation. However, more than a few first-person accounts that I studied claimed otherwise. Perhaps the truth is somewhere in the middle. The Danish government actively discouraged violent resistance because it feared a severe backlash from the Germans against the civilian population. But not all citizens obeyed that edict, and isolated attempts were made to create resistance cells and conduct intelligence activities. According to one source, intelligence officers from the Danish army, referred to as the princes, began transmitting reports to London as early as April 15, 1940, 4 days after the Germans arrived. My research turned up dozens of personal accounts of individuals who set fire to vehicles and buildings, blew up factories with homemade grenades, stole or altered records and important documents, took and forwarded photos to authorities of technology, conducted public protests, and knitted and wore RAF bobcats, beanies that featured the red, white, and blue rondelle of the RAF. As mentioned, King Christian X did not flee at the invasion, and many sources indicated that the most significant, symbolic, and important act of leadership that he carried out was to continue his daily morning horseback rides through the streets of Copenhagen. He would leave the royal palaces on his horse, wearing his general's uniform, and ride through the streets alone, surrounded only by the people on their way to work. It is also reported that the Germans ordered him to lower the Danish flag from the royal palace, to which he ordered a soldier to raise the flag every morning. The Germans then threatened to shoot the soldier, to which the king replied, "That soldier will be me." The Danish flag remained flying for the rest of the war. One of the earliest groups to form was the Churchill Club, composed of 8 teenage boys from the Aalborg Cathedral School in North Jutland. Led by 16-year-old Nuke Peterson, they are thought to have carried out more than 24 acts of sabotage that included stealing weapons and destroying vehicles, blueprints, and plane parts, before being arrested in May of 1942. The boys were fined and jailed with sentences ranging from 1.5 years to 5 years in prison. One report claims that even during imprisonment, some of the boys managed to escape at night to continue their sabotage activities for some time. Then they would sneak back inside before sunrise. In 1942, the Communist Party of Denmark was banned by the Germans, and in response, communists formed small resistance cells all over the country under an umbrella they called the Kommunistische Partisaner, translated Communist Partisans. Without weapons and other tools, there was little they could do. Less than a year later, the cells merged with a group of students who had set fire to a facility filled with an inventory of German listening devices. The name changed to Border League Partisaner, which meant civil partisans, but quickly became known as BOPA. Their operation grew quickly as more individuals joined, bringing a wealth of knowledge, supplies, and contacts, giving them the ability to perform significant acts of sabotage against factories, storehouses, and other important facilities. BOPA also published an underground newspaper that is said to have reached a circulation of 120,000 copies per day by the end of occupation. A third group was formed in April of 1943 and named Holger Dansk, after a mythical heroic figure who sleeps until Denmark is in danger. With about 350 volunteers, it was among the largest of the Danish resistance group. They carried out sabotage operations, including blowing up railway lines strategically important to the Germans. They also trained members of BOPA on sabotage techniques. The organization eventually partnered with Britain's Special Operations Executive and helped coordinate resistance throughout Denmark. Inroads were made, but not widespread. Then came August 29, 1943. The German demands on the Danish authorities increased to the point where they could no longer be accommodated. Specifically, the Germans demanded the death penalty be introduced for acts of sabotage, and the military intervened against work stoppages. The Danish armed forces were demobbed, the Navy scuttled, and the officers interned for a while. Protests and riots broke out, leading to the implementation of military law. Werner Best, an SS general and Reich plenipotentiary who served as the actual ruler of Denmark, sent a telegram to Hitler asking for power and support, saying the Jewish question had to be solved before he could end martial law. Hitler's reply was an edict. The final solution was to be implemented and Danish Jews deported and eliminated. The response to this edict led to the resignation of Denmark's elected parliament and cabinet under Mr. Scavenarius and founding of the Freedom Council, which brought together well-placed groups from Danish society and included hospitals, the police, the military, students, and social democrats, as well as the resistance cells already in place. Danes finally considered themselves at war. Fortunately, by the time the Germans got around to trying to round up the 7,800 Jews in Denmark on October 1st, 1943, a concerted effort by hundreds of individuals managed to hide and ultimately transport over 7,220 of the Jews to Sweden, who had now reversed its policy regarding refugees. Coordination between the SOE and BOPA ensured vast amounts of intelligence gathering, counterfeiting of documents, smuggling of refugees, and publishing of illegal newspapers. Allied planes parachuted in containers that held weapons, ammunition, radio equipment, and explosives. Between March and September of 1943, 19 flights from Great Britain had dropped 79 cartons containing explosive, detonators, and ammunition to be used by Danish saboteurs. That number increased dramatically in the final 2 years of the war, and in 1945, more than 4,000 containers carrying 430 tons of material were dropped. Certain resistance groups specialized in receiving and distributing the materials. As the end of the war approached, the number of acts of sabotage escalated, with the resistance conducting dozens of operations, which prevented the need for the Allies to bomb German facilities in Denmark. Are you intrigued by the bravery of everyday people who joined resistance groups during World War II? Check out my series, The Resistance Chronicles. Fictional stories based on extensive research, and information on buying these books is found in the details section. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.